All right, welcome to the first episode of Rock in a Hard Place. This is about our strength workshop that we'll be doing. So we'll go through what we think is important about this module. So here we go.
So, personal strengths. First module. What we're trying to do in this one is figure out exactly what you have in you, your internal attributes, not necessarily talking about skills in aptitudes, more talking about your internal characteristics. So, if you think about it, our strengths are built in capacities, things that we have either latently, meaning underneath the surface, or pronounced within us. And what those strengths become is us, our identity, who we are.
So let me ask you, why do personal strengths even matter? I mean, we're doing this workshop, and it's common sense that knowing your strengths are beneficial for you. But what does the research show? What is the actual evidence of doing strengths?
You know, I think it comes back to, the title of this course, Survive or Thrive. And the concept of knowing your strengths, understanding what your personal strengths are and what the weaknesses are really known to give you kind of an elevated sense of vitality, right? That inner fulfillment, that sense of understanding who you are through self awareness of those different character traits. It's also really highly correlated with being able to approach and achieve the goals that you set because you're really able to go into it with a much better, precise, efficient strategy
Yeah,
because you know exactly what works for you in particular.
and it's also self-aware that you feel more competent in it, or more confident in that strength.
Exactly. And anytime that you have that confidence paired with that kind of self awareness in the moment, right? Almost that, tunnel vision or when time kind of slows down, you're going to be a lot more productive, mostly because of the engagement that you have there, right? That kind of hyper focus on exactly what you're going to use and all of that being out in front of you.
So when we talk about, because we're talking about strengths, so let's kind of break down real quick our lesser strengths. There's thrown around the term weakness. Let's just talk about that real quick. Let's get the weakness part out of the way. Let's get that stigma out of the way.
But, weakness is something that often comes out of an imbalance where you almost overuse or, in a sense, abuse one of your strengths. Take, for instance, something like being adaptable. Being adaptable is a good thing. Being able to change, being able to readily change is good. But if you overuse that, you're going to find yourself quickly into chaos, right? Because you're just changing and changing and
Yeah.
changing, and you're not there long enough in one spot to become proficient, right? And so generally weaknesses are born out of that and tend to have kind of polarities. Now, it's important to note also, though, that weakness isn't necessarily the polar opposite of a strength, and the polar opposite of a strength isn't going to be a
A weakness.
weakness,
Yeah.
right? Again, adaptability. So you could say adaptability or steadfastness, right? A term steadfast meaning to be able to hold your ground. But steadfast is good.
Yeah.
That term feels better than inflexible
Yeah.
because they're not necessarily the same thing. And so that's where we're talking about this precision and dialing it in and really finding this stuff out and exploring this stuff is what's going to take care of some of those lesser strengths or those weaknesses by bringing you back in balance. It should be noted that this has been shown to work with students. There have been work that have shown that things like life satisfaction go up when we have students in a semester write down what their strengths are and focus on their strengths. So this really has impact, I think, broader than what we're doing in college this semester or in college at all beyond those boundaries.
Even learning about your strengths, you can also find out how can I apply these strengths.
Yeah,
I mean, like, so I have in, as you'll all take the strength work in the strength workshop, one of the surveys, and it lists out 24 strengths, and one of mine is love for learning. Now that's great. I like to learn. No duh, I'm in college. That's obvious. But with practical use, well, if I don't know something, I'm competent enough, or I feel competent enough to to go ahead and find out what it is, to go ahead and search down a rabbit hole and figure out, okay, what is this about? How can I use this? A little bit like when I had done research with you. I didn't know a single thing. I didn't know what I was talking about. And so I sat down and I was willing to read because I felt comfortable doing that.
Well, and, that's where it's also important, because if you know what you're good at, you can communicate that to others. When others start spending time around you, they get to know you a little bit better and know how to best challenge you. And we'll circle back around to that notion of when you, as somebody who possesses strengths, can see them in somebody else. That's absolutely it. You have to challenge them.
What if, we talked about challenging. What if something isn't going your way when you're in your strengths, or when you think you're using your strengths? We talked about steadfastness and even dependability, or being able to be effective with your strengths. What allows some people to work through with mental toughness? Yeah, be around you.
Yeah. You're gonna have to repeat that.
It's all good. So when we're talking about mental strength, some things don't go your way. When you're steadfast, maybe it doesn't work out the way that you thought it would. When you think you're trying to be effective, it doesn't work out the way you thought it would. What are some ways, or why should we even care about mental strength and mental toughness?
So, this breaks down to that kind of concept of character. Whenever we hear somebody say, you got character, what they're saying to you is that they perceive some dependent qualities that you have, some qualities that you rely on. And so what we get out of that a lot is this fortitude of that character to be able to push that character through. And what that means is it's a constant battle of dialing in more, learning where it goes. We talk about this concept of self-awareness. We talk about relying on strengths. This is growth. When we start to get into it and package it. And that growth comes out of different forces drawing you to use things in different ways. And from there, we start to learn them. That's one of our kind of key cognitive functions. And where we start seeing us understand what we have, what we possess, and what we can do. Sometimes, when you start looking at people who we'd call courageous, those are people who have that fortitude in their character, where those strengths, those things that they rely on as part of their identity, who they are, their gifts in a way, really are unwavering. Even in stress and crisis, you see people, who can run into burning buildings and keep their wits about them. Or people like kindergarten teachers, my God, who have the patience, right, to listen and detect what important things are going on in a room full of 16 5 or 6
16 5-year-olds where half of them are picking their nose and throwing it at you.
Right, and just full of this vast array of questions, right? And they can corral that. That's a fortitude and a strength where in a situation where you or I might bend, they possess that gift. We possess ours in different ways.
And we talk about, people walking through, going into a burning building, but there's other everyday activities where you won't feel comfortable in, such as a drive-through.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, we talk about this quite often, about introversion, extroversion. This is something that, I tell John and others quite often about how anxious I get in like a drive-through at McDonald's. It's just, I haven't experienced it enough. I have no idea what I want to order off the menu, right? It's called fast food, so it has a connotation that I'm supposed to be really moving here. And so I pull up, and for some reason they put the menu past where I'm supposed to tell them what I want. And I don't know what I want yet. So I just capitulate and take the first thing I see off the menu. It's somewhat adventurous, but I don't always come out on top in it, right?
Yeah.
I don't always get exactly what I'm looking for. And that's because I don't have experience in that realm, and it's probably one of the only situations that I'm like severely introverted in. When we start breaking down, what we look at personal strengths as part of that personality profile.
Talking about personality, let's kind of debunk the extroversion, introversion, one way only.
Yeah. So a lot of you have taken the Myers-Briggs test, the MBPS, right? Uh,
ENTJ.
yeah. So this is where you get the four letters, right? The E or the I for introvert, extrovert, right?
Yep.
So this makes you think that you are one or the other, and that's not how psychology works. Uh, we don't really do binary on off. Everything is a spectrum of people. There's a broad array of diversity in just about every function of human experience. Yet
Yeah,
we brand introversion extroversion.
especially in different situations. I think it's only appropriate in a situation to act a certain way for a certain person.
And that's why,
Yeah.
right? So why is it different situationally? And it comes back to strength, right? Character, what you have in that scenario. Introversion could provide you, if you think about that, validation for avoiding an interaction, perhaps.
Yeah,
Uh,
being avoiding unnecessary conflict.
right, and it could be something as simple as you don't want to engage interactions, right? Which we would see as kind of a strong introvert quality. That avoidance of small talk, some of those, really conversations with less depth or more cliche, we could say, because they don't fulfill you as much. You want depth of experience with others, perhaps. That could force you away from people that really could spur some awesomeness in you.
Yeah,
And so we have to be careful about how we use personality. And that's why I prefer talking about personality as kind of Peterson Seligman's work that looks at strengths as those internal capacities, components, those characteristics and character traits. I think it's a really nice way to be able to bridge away from those polarities and get more into options and individual
situational
things.
use. What in a situation do I feel most confident in? If I've never talked to a person before, I feel pretty extroverted
Yep.
in that situation. So I feel comfortable with greeting myself and saying, "Hey, this is who I am. Nice to meet you. Who are you?" And in other settings, where like if I meet my stimuli, if I talk to 100 people a day, I just shut the door at the end of the night,
Yeah.
and I don't want to talk to anybody. So that's pretty introverted.
Yeah, it's like sometimes I get angry when I see those things on the internet, and those memes that talk about, introverts wanting to lay down in bed and just curl up and miss a day. I want to do that too. Sometimes I got to lay in bed all day.
Yeah.
I hit my limit, everybody has a limit. It could just be perhaps that introvert's limit is a lower threshold.
Yeah.
Just because we're able to regenerate that power out of kind of our interactions with people, which is cool.
So after taking their surveys, they've listed out their strengths. They've got 5 that they'll probably remember.
Yep.
5 strengths that they'll remember, and then 5 that they're like, oh wow, I'm actually not that good in that. I'm actually not that forgiving. Something that I am. That's one of my lesser strengths. How can we build off that list?
Well, I mean, the first thing that's important is you just figured out what a strength that you're really not utilizing is, right? So you started to build your self awareness to the point where you now understand yourself a little bit better. And yeah, it sounds crazy that answering a whole bunch of questions on the internet could give you some precise psychological dimensions. And well, yeah, it can, but also remember, it's not completely foolproof,
Yeah.
right? Have fun with it, utilize it as part of the experience, but don't hold strong, right?
Don't be dependent.
Yeah, don't be dependent on
Because
it.
it is situational. I mean, if you had like a bad day, if you're like mom yelled
Yeah.
at you an hour before you're taking the test, you're going to answer much different than you would
Sure.
on a regular day.
And, Peterson and Seligman and their work, that's the 300 questionnaire, 300 item questionnaire that's in there, the VIA. That's very, very detailed and probably tested against all sorts of external interferences. But still, the reliability might not be there if large things happen. So we typically look at it as evidence in collection with another thing. But what we're using that stuff for, is part of that self-awareness and really building out your perspectives a little bit. If you get one of those answers in one of these surveys, inventories, or even just you listing things out or asking friends, families what your strengths are, which is another thing I'd really recommend doing, you'll get more perspective. And that's what we're looking for here. Like, have you ever seen the back of your head? Have you? So, what does it look like? And is it really there? Like, that's profound nonsense, right? But it's also true. You've only seen it through a mirror. Same with you knowing about yourself. You, you could look more crooked than you think, right?
Yeah.
Think about that. There could be any number of differences because you're looking at a mirrored reflection of you and you're relying on your brain to sort out all of those little bits.
Yeah.
And
Even like when we talk about reflecting on and for,
yeah,
right, you still need that social outlet to listen
right.
to.
Because somebody else is going to look at something fundamentally different. And so those perspectives are really, really good to have. And then ground against something like a psychological instrument that's been more standardized.
Talking about on improving our lesser strengths, or even improving the good strengths that we have, and kind of learning how to master those strengths.
There was a really, really cool article that was published this year that talked about how we label feelings. So, our generalized feelings and emotions. And the takeaway from this article was that if you can put a term on it, a name on it, it's an emotion, which means we could have an infinite amount of emotion. We'll sit here and we could say, yeah, but those characters weren't part of Inside Out, right? So they're not our big emotions.
Only Disney people will know that.
Yeah, I'm a big Pixar fan. But think about how freeing it is to be able to label something with a term that resonates with you. That term is independent. Sure, it could be a term shared, like anger, we usually share, but remember, each one of us, anger is different. We just use a collective term because it's easier to communicate because it holds shared meaning. But think about some of those emotions we have that other people might not get. Some of the darker emotions we have, some of the really happy,
Very
excited
cynical,
ones.
yeah.
Right? Yeah, like I think of my son Wyatt, we call him a step back flapper, right? When he gets really excited about something he built, he's done this since he was like 2 years old. He'll stand up,
Yeah,
take a step back, jump up and down, and kind of flap his arms.
Yeah.
And I should tell you, Wyatt's on the spectrum, so that is, a somewhat typical behavior in that context, and it's just cool because I don't have that emotion, right? I don't do that. I don't feel it that kinesthetically.
Yeah.
And so when we look at that research that really identified how freeing something like emotion can be, and we pair that with this kind of strengths work, what we're starting to see is that you label it yours and it gives you potential to then almost hold it.
Like an endowment.
Yeah. And manipulate it like some clay that you're forming into something, looking at where it can go, right? Or to use a woodworking metaphor, to work with the grain of what that strength is, because we don't want to really work against what the material is,
Yeah,
right?
the cliche is playing with the cards you're dealt.
Yeah, playing with the cards you're dealt, another great one, right? And that's where we start to identify exactly where we can improve and a lot of how we're going to be able to even do that, right?
And even identifying what's good and what's bad, we could talk about the vocabulary.
I mean, this is something
Yeah.
you love, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
vocabulary.
I mean, we've joked about how I am all for, I am pro mirror self-talk.
7 different kinds of smoke.
I'm all about it, and we've taken it through a couple programs on campus, and we've talked about it and how beneficial actual self-talk is, and even if it's not out loud, but it's the mental thought, the mental fortitude to have a positive mindset.
And I mean, we know all of those affirmations that come from others are so potent.
Yeah.
But we also know how potent they are on your own because that's your language,
Yeah.
right? Like that's 100% you know what you're talking about.
Like that's your inner conscience
Yeah.
telling you, hey, yo, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's plugging your headphones in rather than using Bluetooth. It's going to sound better. It can't not, right?
With some Bose or JBL.
Yeah, exactly. The higher fidelity, right? It's going to be more impactful. And so, really, increasing your vocabulary in a positive way and what that positive self talk looks like really starts to crowd out the doubt. I'm getting to be an old man and I love my front lawn, and everybody knows the way you get rid of weeds on the front lawn is by having really good grass. And that grass is the positive. The more you grow those positive thoughts, the more it'll crowd out those negative weeds, those
Yeah,
thoughts.
that's a really good. That's a really good. Well, not only is it about thoughts, but it's also about your actual behavior. I mean, your body posture.
God, yeah.
So you could see a person who is orating the room, like, just as like you are in a lecture. You feel really comfortable in a lecture. So your behavior is to bring your shoulders back and your chest out, and to hold the room with authority. You're competent. You
Oh,
feel
yeah.
ready. You feel positive.
You start seeing me pacing back and forth in any classroom I'm in, I'm about to go off. I'm having a good time. I'm in my flow, right?
So it's important to know that not even is it important to have positive thoughts, but also changes your behavior.
Well, and a lot of times when I'm in those moments, I'm seeing people's faces as they recognize where I feel strong, right? And so I'm walking around that room, looking in students' eyes, right, catching a glimpse of how they look, and that's just giving me more. That's just making me feel better, and I can hear, my head going, "Come on, man," having a good time in there, and really catching that rhythm.
That's also important to know in a group setting, especially when you go to campus. I mean, I don't want you to be fake, but I really want you to come in with a positive mindset.
Well, and the funny thing is that positive mindset's going to allow you to really get the take home of the rest of what we're talking about, and that's finding a way to appreciate the things that you may have undervalued in the past, ways of behaving. I'm a married man. I've been married, for 12 years now. Um, my wife's a really, really wonderful therapist, and she's rubbed off on me quite a bit. We've been together, you know, close to 2 decades now. She's a very good one on one speaker. She's good at making people feel comfortable. She's great at solving issues. She's really, really good at getting down to that level. I'm good in crowds. Throughout time, her influence has shown me parts that I've undervalued. Undervalued as somebody who feels very competent in interacting with people, and that's being soft rather than being hard in a
Yeah,
sense, and being a little bit more open rather than kind of being forceful.
yeah. When you're willing to immerse yourself, you may at first think of people who are interested in things as like kind of weird or bent, you know,
Yeah,
and when you come to campus, that's gonna be your first reaction with some things. But then once you start to get around people and you start to immerse yourself in their strengths, you kind of appreciate, that's kind of rubbing off on me.
well, and that's kind of the beauty of being around people who kind of understand who they are and have that self awareness. It makes me think of our first incoming class of our learning living learning community that just had this hugely diverse group of people
Yeah, no one was the
with
same.
all
Besides,
sorts of differing strengths.
even the twins were different. Even the
Yeah,
twins. So
all sorts of different strengths, aptitudes, things they look for, things they like, ways of behaving, approaching, all sorts of things that were different. And they all melded together, like seamlessly, because they all recognized the power of the stuff they haven't got yet. They were all looking to kind of be better, and it was a really releasing time frame for us because I was nervous. It was the first time we ever did it, uh, and it went beautifully because they were just ready for everything we threw at them,
yeah,
except the dot. You'll get the dot too.
yeah,
Can't tell you what it is right now.
that'll be
Be
interesting.
ready for the dot.
Now, when you're talking about in group, and in this module, they'll see other people's strengths. People will post about it, I'm sure, and what they're not good at. So, what's one of the ways that they can do that in this module with the incoming class?
So one of the important things that we get into here is like showing off your strengths. In this class, that means showing it off to people you don't necessarily know. Um, I get it, that's tough. But that's what we're doing. I think the big one is that, like, look at how you use those strengths. Show us the strengths that you feel give back to that community, right? That kind of social atmosphere. Show us those strengths. You don't have to be someone who's always comfortable with everything, but what I would tell you to do is always take the chance to figure out how then to step up in a different way.
Yeah, it's great that you know your strengths, but how are you actually applying them?
Exactly, right? And where are you showcasing them? How are you still going to be growing those strengths, you know? And I think what we're talking about for this class really is how do we collaborate on a lot of these strengths? You know, you're in this class right now with, I believe, this morning we had signed up 50% of the incoming class,
Yeah.
160 people. You're in this with the majority of people you're going to see kind of in first year res halls, dining areas, classes, you know, collaborate with them. That sense of pride and community is what I wanted us to deliver in this course for you. I mean, one of the reasons we're doing this class in the first place is to help you collaborate on a lot of those.
Yeah, they've
Uh,
kind of missed that out,
yeah,
this year, obviously.
yeah,
Um,
a lot of those really good honorable recognitions. You know, a lot of those reinforcements weren't there in the way that we were accustomed to, and they felt kind of weird. And we don't
yeah,
know if they soaked in right. So we're here to do that in our way, and in my way, that's to collaborate.
yeah,
That's what we did in the class. It's a collaboration between myself and our 7 TAs. You know, John, Maddie, Emily,
yep,
Kelsey, Haley, Courtney, Elisa. I mean, everybody has put part of themselves in this and contributed their strengths. So, you know, put yours out there because there's going to be people who they like that. And, you know, that's when you become kind of one of the strength finders, right? You become one of those people who's able to seek out people and make a group, make a team. That's one of the most important attributes of leaders that we have out there, the people who are able to communicate well, really develop that kind of consistency of interaction with people, help develop others, have that empathy function,
yeah,
right? And seek out, you know, that maximization, that strategy. Empathy is one of the most powerful kind of drugs, I would say, covering all sorts of different, you know, dopamine, endorphin release. When we feel that kind of connection and start seeing another person through their eyes, understanding their experience, even their hardship, and being able to you know, get a lot of internal viewpoint of who they are. You start to also recognize who you are through that function.
and a lot of that, when we've watched a movie, we see the hero, and we're like, I'm Denzel in the movie. Like, that's me. This is my movie, right? And so there's also that positive side of empathy that allows us to kind of reach out and celebrate our strength. So let's talk about celebration.
You know, celebrating your strengths is my favorite part. Uh, but seriously, you have to understand other people's successes and you want to be celebrating. That's how you start to harness those moments that you're going to picture when you're up against the wall. That's where we're starting to give evidence that we can fall back on for our, you know, fortitude of character. That's that process, that celebration and that empathy in that celebration. That's that endorphin release right there. That's that feel good stuff,
Yeah, I
right?
mean that
I
gives
mean,
you that gives you energy.
yeah,
That's positive
I
feeling.
mean,
That's
that's the
just
drug. I mean, hit me up with a little bit of affirmation. I'll feel great, you
for
know?
those psych majors. That's a hard positive right there.
Yeah,
That's a
I mean,
positive reinforcement.
that that's it.
And when you're in a group setting, it's important to cheer for others. Like, you got to rally behind others as well, especially if they don't think it's their strength.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, you go into this understanding that this is you. It's how you do things, you know? Unleashed. That's pretty damn risky. You know, in my experience and in my teaching, I am 100% me. I you know, harness that and you get me as authentically as I am. In some of my classes, we do something I call No Work Friday. Kind of a risky term to call it no work, right? But it shouldn't be. It's Friday. Who wants to work on a Friday?
Yeah,
I don't. I'd rather have fun. And to me, fun is getting inside people's brains.
Being interested in whatever the topic is.
Yeah,
I
just
mean, all the way from
going.
all the way from we did in adolescence. All right, plan your perfect date. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna do? Now let's get detailed here. Let's get into it. Are we doing a morning date? Like, are we doing a dinner? We're not doing red sauce and spaghetti.
And you want them to be attracted to you, so you've got to get their heart rate up too,
Yeah.
right?
Maybe a morning coffee, not overfilling. Maybe some crepes. Maybe that's
Ooh,
good.
I love the crepes. Those are
Lakeside.
little thin pancakes.
Lakeside, you have a view. Are you Are you sitting next to each other?
And so this is all the what. The beauty of what we do is you can't help but get into the why. And so one of my strengths is being able to hide academics in minute things and to draw out academic perspectives in ways that you don't really feel like you're having to sit there and learn. And that's important to me. And so No Work Friday is actually a celebration of that. It's student led. It's that collaborative function of letting students show their strengths, letting them step up.
Yeah, you're big on your sailor analogies.
Yeah,
You know, this is the ship, and
I'm the wind.
Yeah,
You know, my job is to give you some oomph. You get to figure out exactly how to tack your sails. You get control of the rudder. You do your thing. I'm going to give you propulsion. And I want to see where you're going to be able to take it. And
Yeah.
if I think you're going the wrong way, I'll just pull back a little bit and we'll slow down.
yeah. We'll just calibrate, right?
Right. And you know, the cool thing is the amount of times when we're in these discussions that I get to sit there nodding along, smiling, when I'm so eager to contribute in something that we're talking about. You know, I'm sitting there and that's a celebration in my eyes. I'm like, oh, you guys are being so interesting. I have so many thoughts. I have so many things that I can add in. This is so much fun.
Yeah.
You know, and that's that function. And I mean, there are many times where you'll get an email from me because of that experience, where I'll say, guys, that class was just awesome. Here's the rest of my thoughts I couldn't get out. Like, you know, that's where we start celebrating those strengths, especially with other people, harnessing them for others. And that's really, again, an extension of this collaborative function. We want to bring other people with us because it's no fun to be strong by yourself,
No.
because then you don't have the capacity to learn from other people who are high on their game, right?
So over time, your strengths will grow, and you'll start to feel more confident, and you'll start collaborating with others. Now, what happens when we over pursue our strength?
You know, this is what we talked about with the balance of weaknesses. And what happens is we start overusing or we start leaning on something a little bit too hard. You see, in the majority of psychology, human development, we talk a lot about balance. I don't like the term balance per se.
Dr. McKenzie uses appropriateness.
Yeah, I like the term homeostasis because it refers to bringing about alignment, right? But we're still moving up and changing, whereas I see balance coming back to one fixed point. Again, everybody's got personal terms they like, right? It's part of what makes us tick. But when you fall out of alignment, right, out of balance, right, they're not necessarily the appropriateness for what's going on. We have to go through this collaboration, this kind of calibration. We have to reset.
Yeah.
You know, we have to go through and check that everything is where.
Even if you think
We're
you're on top of your
best.
game, of your strength, I mean, just as any athlete will do at the beginning of their season, you know, they'll hit their benchmarks. All right, well, you know, where am I at? How fast am I running in basketball? Like,
Yeah,
it's
that's
all seriousness.
self-accounting,
Yeah.
right? I mean, think about if like every single time you used your checkbook, right, and you went in, you rounded up. That's if you don't calibrate that at some point.
That's a lot of money.
But again, we're not in this to survive. We're in this to thrive. We
That was
go.
that was a good input right there.
Yeah, you know, I love
that
when
was
they
good.
get
That
the
was good.
title of the
That
movie
was good. Yeah.
in the movie,
Yeah.
right? Like Snakes on a Plane.
Yeah.
When Samuel L. Jackson said, "Get these motherfucking snakes off this motherfucking plane," I mean, I erupted in applause, right?
If you haven't seen that movie, you need to watch that movie.
Snakes on a Plane,
Yeah.
it's an instant classic, right? But just think about that. Nobody is above not needing to change. Everybody can dial in a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right.
Even if you think you're wrong, you have to, in the back of your head, you have to know that it could be better.
Yeah, you're always going to need a haircut.
That's another good one.
You know, you're always going to need to do something. If we do that something purposefully, it works better rather than having to do it forcefully.
Now, I want to talk, when we talk about calibration, even first starting something that's a lesser strength, you're not going to be a master. Carl Jung's idea of the fool and the jester, it's the precursor to becoming a master. You must be willing to be a fool to be a master. How would you get some students in your class who, in public speaking, there was a student who said, I don't know how to do this. I can't do this. I don't think I can do this.
I remember that student. I really liked her.
She'd be cool.
Well, I just asked her. I said, all right, well, give me one word for this. Give me a word you think describes you. I think I said.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the word was, but she said the word. I asked a couple more questions, and all of a sudden she clicked, and she started to really understand. And the assignment we were doing was talking about ourselves. It was a presentation on us. It was an intro speech, talking about who we are and literally who we are, and the same function of what we're doing here, your strengths.
Yeah.
And it was tough, but once she started to walk through them, it became easier. In order to be able to do that teaching function, you have to be able to play the fool, as we put it. What that means is that you have to be able to get off track, get sidetracked, step off in order to know what you have, right?
Yeah, one of the greatest opportunities to do that is field period. And
Yeah.
not to plug into field period, but realistically, yeah. Go see something that you've never seen before.
Exactly. Experience things. Get out there. Do something. Fall flat on your face. Why not? Why not? And that's a tough one. And I'll tell you what. For some of you saying, well, that really, really scares me. That's okay. There's things I'm scared of too. Things that, freak me out more than the drive-through at McDonald's, right? But that's okay too. But be ready to take on some fear somewhere. Because that's when we start to be able to teach others, because we know what it's like to go through that process. And you really have to experience it before you can teach it. Yeah. You have to be able to draw yourself back in alignment before you do it to others. Because otherwise you run the risk of running them afoul.
That's the biggest thing about this class, is that you have to be willing to just go in and just do it. There's going to be a point where you may feel like you're not being guided to do something, and primarily that may be purposeful, but will help and guide you. That's the whole point about this. We're not doing it for you. You chose to do this class. You chose to take the opportunity, and that's what you're going to do. And you have to experience it.
We give you an out.
Yeah.
We give you a bar. You choose to step up if you want to. And I think that's fair, and you should.
Once you experience, then not only can you learn from what you did, but you can teach others better.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, now you can reach.
Yeah.
Now you can go for it. Because we can show you how to harness them. You have to be able to reach beyond your own abilities, because ability is something you have right now, and that's a static place to be. You have to be dynamic. You have to reach for them. We have to do them while we can. You can't do this forever.
Yeah.
You are primed in your life right now, in your developmental time frame, to seek out experiences in a psychological way to better yourself and create your identity.
And biologically, you're an aiming creature.
Yeah.
Fun fact, one of the reasons why you actually have pupils and you have whites in your eyes, so that you can see what other people are doing and know what they're up to. So you're an aiming creature, biologically.
If you go through this period allowing your strengths to take the back seat, you may lose out on opportunities. And that's what we're actually here for, because that's when you start getting choice. Choices don't come without opportunity. You have to first create opportunity, then you can have a choice.
Yeah.
You don't get a choice
What do you
until that
usually
point.
say in senior sem? What do you usually say?
I tell them. So I have students in our senior sem where we start talking about careers in grad school, and they go, "Well, I don't know if I want to go to grad school." And I tell them flat out, I say, "You don't really have a choice right now, so create the opportunity. Then you can think about it. Why think about it now? It's not on the table. You don't even know. What job should I get? What's available? You don't know what opportunities are there." And so, what we have to really, really be careful of here is that we go towards one specific output because we don't know what exists yet. So, your job in college is to create opportunities, not opportunity in one singular place. It's good to have a dream, it's better to have a flexible goal. Because you don't know what's going to happen. The amount of people I see that change their majors halfway through, they do so because they recognize a lot that they didn't before through those experiences. Field period, that's our jam.
Yeah.
Go out there and do something that's nuts.
Yeah. I mean, go travel to Romania. Go to.
Yeah, Dr. Graves does a really awesome trip to Romania. You should check it out.
Yeah.
You know, do anything. I've been trying to get a student to go skydiving for so long. Would I personally jump out of a plane? No, but I need somebody to describe it to me in absolute vivid detail because
I mean,
I'm never
I did
gonna
it.
do it.
I mean, I did it.
Yeah.
It was worth it.
See,
I mean,
I'm not gonna do it,
Yeah.
but tell me all about it,
Yeah.
right? Because I
Yeah.
can then learn with you,
Yeah.
right? This is kind of the cool thing, and then you can reach. Who knows? Maybe that'll propel me into not being so afraid of heights, right?
Yeah.
Jumping out of a perfectly fine aircraft. And all of that reaching, right, collaborating, the calibration that we go through, the recognition of those strengths, really brings us to the most finest point of life, right? The beach.
Yeah. My martini.
The beach. And that sounds weird, right? At the end of the line is the beach. The beach is a metaphor. It's the place where you see people around you, you see them doing all sorts of different activities, and you start looking and being able to recognize strengths that are out there. And take your time while you're relaxing on the beach in your, beach years to go and help and enable others. Sometimes through those small little celebrations, right? Like, have you ever been somewhere, and somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh, I really, really, really like what you said to that cashier. That was really kind of you." It's just that one small moment, but they recognized that kindness and wanted to trigger it in another person. That is what we refer to as beaching.
Yeah.
That moment where you can trigger, recognize, and reinforce and further the strengths of those other people.
One that's kind of applicable is group work.
Group work's something that's really funny to me because people don't really understand what it means. You think like the sum of parts equals a whole. And so, like, if you think of group work as you and you have 5 group members, right? Your job as a group is to cover this square. You 5 circles can't cover that square without overlapping. Yet, so many times I see this isolation pattern of get out of my circle. I'll do my circle, you do your circle.
I'm gonna write this paragraph. You're gonna write that paragraph.
And that works. You survive. But to thrive, you have to recognize what people can do and step up and lead. And leadership is done by recognizing strengths in people, triggering them, harnessing them, and helping them do that. A lot of the work that I did in this class was trying to recognize what our TA group was doing and further them toward that goal, or just make them feel good about what they were doing. And when you start looking through those materials, those are yours. Those are the TA group's materials. Those aren't mine. They did that work. And so when we go through this and you start doing these activities, remember, you have the choice to do 1 or 2. And when you're done with those 2 and done with the next unit this week, hit that Thrive objective, that inventory, the VIA, to list out your strengths. It'll take you a while.
It'll take you a good 30, 40 minutes.
But you get some pretty cool feedback from that. And, you're in this class, and that's why. I'll do it too. You're more than welcome to let me know what you had. Contact me. reach out. I'm happy to talk to you, one-on-one anytime about this stuff. Because, in the end, this is also what I enjoy doing. Sitting around talking about stuff on a Tuesday afternoon, just riffing and having a good time.
We'll have open hours for when you guys have questions or whatnot. Yeah, feel free to come and discuss.
So, I'm Dr. Koberstein,
I'm John Salati,
and we're between a rock.
in a hard place.
See you next time.
Take care.